You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 6, and today Laurel shares her quitting story, the moment she went from working for somebody else to working for herself, what led up to it, what made her decide to take the jump, and what happened immediately after. Was it as easy as she thought it would be? That's next on Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money. Work less and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
This is the Red Podcast. We've got a two-parter today, Laurel.
Very exciting.
I was out and about, and by that I mean I was hanging out doing yoga this morning. And afterwards I went to a Chipotle where I was on a deck eating a burrito.
Sounds like you have an awesome life.
It's a pretty good life, and it's interesting because I see guys, sometimes if I'm there during lunchtime, in kind of like the suit and tie, like the monkey suit kind of thing, or maybe a blue-collar uniform. And I see more women than men that are not wearing that. A lot of women in like yoga pants or something with kids. Mommy, mommy, mom, mom, mom. But I'm like the only guy there that just kind of seems unemployed.
Unemployable.
Well, that's probably the better term, right?
Yeah.
I've actually got a job. And I was thinking, you know, how did I get here? I thought it would be an interesting podcast. So I want to do a two-part podcast with you.
Fantastic.
I'm going to have you on the hot seat first, and you can interview me on the next one. But it's not really an interview. It's kind of a discussion. I want to talk about the day I quit.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think it was 2 days ago now. I had the same sort of feeling. I got up in the morning. I got up early, and it was a beautiful day outside. It was in the 60s, and I went for a hike, and it was sunny and nice. And I'm like, wow, I don't have to be at a job. And it just feels really, really good.
Yeah.
To not have to clock in and just to be able to set your own schedule and do what you want to do when you want to do it. That's not every morning for me, but I get to pick and choose when I get to put on my hiking boots and go out.
Sure. And we should probably do an entire episode sometime about scheduling, about the kind of day-to-day, day in the life.
Oh, yeah. How to design your life.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do.
But let's talk about the first step, which is what I call the day I quit.
Quitting your job.
So tell me your story. What happened?
Well, for me, I went to college. I got a mechanical engineering degree, as you know, and went directly into the corporate life. Actually, when I graduated college, I really wanted to, I've always been a photographer. I really wanted to move to San Francisco. I don't really know why I picked San Francisco, but I wanted to move to San Francisco from Nashville, Tennessee, and be an apprentice to a photographer. And before that, I wanted to travel to Spain and hike the Camino de Santiago. And I didn't do either of those. I got a corporate job.
So were they recruiting you? You were a mechanical engineer major, I guess.
Yes. So I got recruited for a company that designed color laser printers.
It's a big company. Everybody's heard of it.
Yes. And so I stepped into the corporate life. And I thought, you know, David, I thought when I got there that even though I didn't want to go that route and I wanted to do my own thing, but I didn't know anybody doing it. But given that I'd done really well in school, I was at the top of my ME class and I was doing really well. You know, most everyone around me, my parents, my friends, my teachers, they thought I'd kind of seamlessly go into this corporate life because I was smart and got good grades and all that stuff. And I did not fit in.
When you say not fit in, what do you mean? The people weren't like you?
The people were great. I worked with great people. I actually had a great boss, but I didn't thrive in the corporate world. The people there seemed to be, I'm going to say happy. They seemed to be happy. And I was coming to work every day miserable. I would wake up with that feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach that I had to spend another 8 hours working for somebody else, not being creative, not being able to set my own schedule. And Sunday nights, man, were the worst. You're just like dreading going back to work like the whole weekend. It was awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I just felt like I had this motivation. I'm a very self-motivated person, and I wanted to do my own thing, and I'm a very creative person. I wanted to be creative, and I just felt like everybody else there was just kind of phoning it in and was happy doing that. And I just couldn't really figure it out.
So I imagine that's pretty tough, though. You went to a very well-known... So can we talk about the school you went to?
Sure.
Okay, so you went to Vanderbilt University in Nashville. Very pricey school, 4 years. I don't think anybody's going to get out of there these days without about a $150,000 bill.
True.
You had a big investment, not only in time, but in money and in effort, blood, sweat, tears, whatever.
Yeah.
It took you, I'm sure, studying to get into Vanderbilt in the first place. So you're however old, 21, 22 years old, and you've got this corporate thing. And was that really when it hit you that, maybe I went down the wrong path?
I don't know if it hit me at that time. I think I always wanted to do my own thing, but everything around me, from friends, family, just environment, society, just kept me on this path that I didn't want to go down. And I remember when I was 18, I guess, or before I was 18, earlier than that, I had to choose like what I wanted to do with my life. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Why do I have to decide right now?
Yeah, it's kind of confusing, isn't it?
It's confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, I grew up as a musician here in Nashville playing out, and I played until even after college. I feel like I was really lucky to kind of have fallen into that. But if you didn't have any hobbies that you could actually make a living at, I imagine that would be really tough. Because it's like, hey, you're going to invest 4 of the best years of your life. You hear that all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And all this money, and you don't even really know if you like it. That's tough.
And that was the thing, is that I made the best decision I could at 16, 17, 18, and really excelled in mechanical engineering. I like that stuff, so didn't have a problem there. But I got out into the corporate life, and it didn't become a good fit for me. And I think I knew that from day one. But when you ignore things, they get louder. If you ignore signs in your life, they just become more prominent. And that's really what happened to me.
Well, I want to know about the first day on the job. You said day one. And I'll have my story here later. But this is just going to be about you. I imagine you're on some kind of, was it like a corporate campus, kind of like a Google campus with...
It wasn't near as cool as at Google campus. We had a lot of fluorescent lighting.
No sleeping pods or anything.
No, nothing cool like that.
Kind of the nondescript corporate whatever, have you seen the movie called, what's that movie with Office Space?
Office Space?
Yeah, well, you're going up to this big complex and everybody's got their...
And the boss is like,
space.
Yeah.
Like, was it that kind of thing where you go in there
similar.
and you're like, oh my gosh, this is awful.
The environment, was pretty similar to that. Again, the people I worked with were fine, so it wasn't the people there. It was actually, the company I worked for, great company, great job. When you looked at my life from the outside, I was doing really well. All
right, so let's get to the nitty-gritty. Great company, great job, great benefits.
Yep.
You're making money.
Making good money.
And you have this inkling like, hey, I need to step away from this. But at that time, I would imagine this is the trap a lot of people get into. They get a job, they make more money. And you're coming out of college, you're making more money than you've ever made, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
They buy a house, get a car. The expenses start piling up. Did you have that issue to overcome?
Not particularly. I already had a car and I was renting an apartment. But I know what you're talking about. I think it's called golden handcuffs. Is you keep moving up in the corporate world and you keep buying more stuff and you keep having to pay for more stuff and keep up this lifestyle. I was so young at the time that I didn't really have to deal with much of that. I rented my apartment, I had my car paid for, and I've never really been a big stuff person. So I wasn't trying to live this crazy, new life making all this money or anything like that. I started putting all my money and saving it and getting ready to launch my business.
Okay, so but even with that, even with the whole money thing under control, you've got parents, you've got coworkers and your friends that are probably not understanding where you are in life. Tell me about that.
Well, I made friends with all the coworkers that I could find that didn't really like their job. Don't do this. This just makes you more miserable when you're taking a break with people who are also miserable. And I said that most people there weren't miserable. But I did find the few people my age who didn't really like that life either, and you kind of stick together. But that just, it keeps you trapped where you are.
Okay, so let me ask you about those guys though, like, because what I found, it's easy to find people that are miserable at a corporate life, and I had something similar to what you had, and again, we'll get into that in the next episode. What I found though is that I felt I was really, really serious about making the plunge. I didn't really know exactly what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, but a lot of guys were just taught. Did you find that?
I did find that, and that's where I really stood out, and that's why I was able to escape. It's because, yes, I was complaining about it. I can't say that was the way to do things, but I was complaining about it. I was miserable every single day at work, but I was the one that was like, I'm going to do something about it. And those guys that didn't, they're still there. Or
Okay.
they're at an equivalent job because I follow them on Facebook. And so they haven't done anything. So you really have to channel all that energy. You can't just sit around the water cooler and complain. You have to channel it into doing something about it.
Okay, so I want to know, this episode, we're going to call it the day I quit or something like that. So talk to me about making the decision and how that went down. Because I imagine it was scary. It was scary for me.
It's scary. But I think for all business owners, if you knew everything that was involved to quit your job and run your business, it would probably stall you from doing it. But you're naive at that point.
Well, what pushed you over the edge? Because you knew, even with your naivete, you knew it was scary.
Don't remember being terrified at the time, but I think when you're making big life decisions, like, hey, because for me, it wasn't like, do I, want to work this job or do I want to work another job? It was like, am I ready to give up this corporate life forever? And I had to get to that. And I was, but I had to get myself and my business on track. So what I did was I decided what business I wanted to start. I mean, that's the first step. If you want,
you knew where you were going to go.
I knew where I was going to go because
right.
That's the first thing you have to do if you want to quit your job. I mean, you have to do something else. I couldn't just quit and go live on the beach in Tahiti or something.
And did you give yourself a time limit? Say, hey, in 6 months, I'm out of here?
Because of the nature of what I decided to do is I decided I was going to launch an eco-friendly retail store. And
like clothing. You sold
clothing. I sold men and women's eco-friendly clothing, organic.
Like made out of hemp and things.
Well, it was stylish. It was very stylish.
Yeah.
But organic cotton and hemp and bamboo and recycled materials. Very cool stuff. So I decided I was going to do this. So I couldn't give myself a time limit because what I was waiting for, and I spent a year planning this business. So what I was waiting for was the right retail space because I wasn't living in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm from.
And that's where you wanted to do the store?
And that's where I wanted to do the store. So I had a commercial realtor working with me, for me at the time, looking for a space for my company. And that's what was slowing me down. So I would have quit the time that he called me and he said, we have a space, and I went to look at it and it was good. I didn't even have time to give a 2 weeks notice. I gave like a 12-day notice or something and said, I am out of here.
Well, were you prepared at that time? Was it as easy as you thought it would be or like you dreamed it would be? Because that's a pretty big plunge. I mean,
it's a pretty big plunge.
Yeah, I've signed leases for office space, and you look at that and it says, well, you're going to be paying, let's say $1,000 a month, whatever, arbitrary. It's a 3-year lease, total amount due, $36,000.
Okay.
You see that those big numbers there, and it's like, oh wow.
It was scary. And all of the projections that you can make for your business, I mean, what it's going to cost you is like a zillion times what you actually think it's going to cost you. And I planned for that. I planned for it to cost like maybe 10 times what I thought it would, but it cost a lot more than that. So I think it was intimidating to take that plunge, but I knew how to set up this business. I knew what to do. I was very prepared, but the business itself didn't really turn out as I
Well, let's not go there
envisioned it.
yet. Let's not. I want to know how you actually quit. Did you walk in and do a Jerry Maguire style where kind of gave him what we call a Tennessee salute?